Hey out there, legal warriors. In this video, I'm going to cover what is the difference in roles between a prosecutor and a victim's advocate. Are they working on the same side? Are they employed by the same people? Who are they looking out for? And thank you to the viewer out there who asked for this question because it's very important. So if you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Linwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 20 years, and I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. More people get the help they need. Now I'm just going to jump right into it. Prosecutors and victims advocates. And, is there a defendant advocate? No, that's, your defense attorney. And so the prosecution side is typically an attorney who works for the prosecutor's office who's trying to prove a case against the defendant. So who represents the government? The prosecutor. Who represents the defendant? Well, a defense attorney, or sometimes the defendant will make a mistake and represent themselves. Don't do that. And then we have this third person involved in certain types of cases, and that's called the victim's advocate. And most commonly, we think about a victim's advocate in a case where there's an actual identifiable victim, and usually that's going to be a domestic violence case. And a victim's advocate is not an attorney. You could be, but it would not be a requirement to be an attorney. And they don't have any actual power in the case. They're not a party. They can't file a motion. They can't do things like that, but they could have influence. So a victim's advocate typically will communicate on behalf of the prosecution to the alleged victim. And it's sort of different everywhere you go. A victim's advocate role might be to say, hey, victim, what do you want to see happen here? Or what questions can I answer for you? Or it might be a little more aggressive. Hey, you really need to do X, Y, or Z because if you don't, bad things might happen to you from the defendant, right? And your mileage is going to vary based upon the personality, the culture, and the marching orders of the particular victim's advocate. Ideally, a victim's advocate is there to just be a liaison between the attorney, that is the prosecutor, and whoever their alleged victim is in the case. And oftentimes a defense attorney might get a report of a brief interview or conversation between the victim's advocate and an alleged victim. And oftentimes we won't get a darn thing. And why is that? It's because there's just different cultures and practices in each jurisdiction, in each prosecutor's office that has a victim's advocate. So let's move back to the prosecutor. Is the prosecutor out to get you? Well, it depends. Their written role is to do justice. And so a prosecutor, especially at the non-felony level, has a fair amount of discretion in most offices to decide what justice is. Is justice a conviction in their mind? Maybe. Is justice treatment and an opportunity for the defendant to get the case dismissed? Maybe. Is justice deciding what cases they should dismiss just because they don't believe it? Again, maybe. You need to talk to your defense attorney because, again, each prosecutor's office has their own culture, their own way of doing things. If someone were to ask me the difference between a Snohomish County prosecutor and a King County prosecutor, I could tell you what I think the difference is. I'm not going to talk about that here to protect the innocent. As far as what you need to think about, if you're an alleged victim in a case and you're being contacted by the advocate, remember that whatever you tell them is likely going to go from their ears to the prosecutor's ears, either verbally or in writing. Do they have your best interests at heart? How could you possibly know? Because they come to things with their own agenda. If you're saying you want a case dismissed, they may not want the case dismissed. They may try to influence you to do certain things. And, that's up to them and it's up to you for what you decide. But a victim's advocate does not represent somebody. They are not a lawyer who represents somebody. If a victim in a case can hire their own lawyer to represent them and then just say, hey, my lawyer is going to be my victim's advocate. We've done that a few times ourselves, representing people, alleged victims, who are unhappy with how they weren't being listened to by the prosecution, typically through their victim's advocate. What can be frustrating for an alleged victim is they may not get to talk to the prosecutors, all going through the advocate, and it may not be because the prosecutor doesn't want to talk to you. The prosecutor's in court, right? The prosecutor's doing so many things. The whole reason the victim's advocate system exists, in my opinion, is because otherwise no one's going to be talking to the alleged victim and try and provide those services. As far as a prosecutor's role go, again, we just talked about it, to do justice, and hopefully they're going to rely on their victim's advocate's input in deciding what it is that they should do in the case. Now, a victim's advocate will pass on that information, but a typical alleged victim doesn't control what happens in the case, right? So often I have to tell people that if you take a look at a criminal case, it's state of Washington or city of Linwood or city of Seattle versus defendant. It's not victim versus defendant. And so a victim is not a party to the action. A victim is a witness, and they can tell the party to the action, the prosecution, who is asserting a case on behalf of the government, what they would like to see happen, but the prosecution is under no obligation to follow what the alleged victim wants. Additionally, there are some rights, statutory rights. If there's a resolution in a DV case, alleged victims have a sort of a right to appear and stuff like that, so there's some notification requirements. But for the most part, alleged victim doesn't actually have power in the system. And that can be frustrating both ways. If you're trying to ensure a conviction, or if you're trying to, get a reasonable outcome on behalf of your loved one, you don't want bad things to happen and mess up somebody's life. That can be very frustrating. So the main reason I made this video, someone asked, in the comments, about that confusion. And again, the biggest confusion is that a victim's advocate does not represent anybody. Think of them as a communicator, an information giver, an information passer on, but don't assume what their motivations are, because you don't know, I don't know, only they know what their motivations are, and it varies person by person. So I hope you found that useful. If so, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. More people get the help they need. More importantly, if you have a criminal matter in Washington State, feel free to reach out to my firm. If we get on board, we'll listen to what happened, we'll identify a way forward, and we will be there for you. Thank you.